Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for another episode of SLMA Radio. Brought to you on behalf of the thousands and thousands of members of the Sales Lead Management Association. It has to do with sales lead management or sales lead marketing. It probably starts here with the SLMA Radio Show. Today, as always, we're privileged to have with us the founder, the executive director, the man behind the organization, Jim Overmeyer. Hey, Jim.
Thank you, Paul. Paul Roberts is our announcer for all programs on the Funnel Radio channel. We've got a special guest today. His name is Andy Paul. He's the CEO and founder of Zero Time Selling. Andy has written several books, Amp Up Your Sales and Zero Time Selling, a leading expert on selling with speed. He has more than 30 years of sales experience in companies ranging from raw startups to Fortune 1000 companies. And I read in his bio that he first started selling women's shoes at J.C. Penney.
That was my first sales job in high school. But yeah, man, that was quite an experience. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, in any case, one of the reasons Andy and I check in with each other every month or so, and we give tips and unasked for advice to each other that actually pays off for both of us. But I was really interested in what he has started lately. And he started something called the Sales House 101. And I don't know if Andy's got the latest statistics, but it seems like whenever they do surveys of salespeople and ask them, how many books have you read in the last year on sales? And they look at you just like you lost your mind. And books? I know how to sell. I don't need no stinking books.
I don't need no stinking books, right?
And so it's quite interesting. These professional salespeople seem to do so little except for company training. So Andy has started this company, and I said, I'd like to know more about it. Why don't you come on the program and tell us about it? So Andy, give us your background a little bit on Zero Time Selling, and then let's get into the Sales House. And
yeah, well, I mean, just actually to clarify just a little bit is so it's really not training. We call it a sales learning accelerator. You talked about with in fact, salespeople oftentimes don't read much. Period. I thought that when you looked at the landscape of how salespeople are being trained and educated, if you will, though there was this big gap in the education side of things. Yeah, we could teach them on process and product and methodology, but they weren't learning anything about why they should be doing those things, the why behind the how. They don't get trained on how to connect with another human being, how to engage their interest, build trust, inspire them to take action, the human-to-human aspects of selling. And so for me, those were the things that propelled me through my career in sales, is really the human aspect of selling, even though I was working in very complex technical fields. And I thought, wow, we have this disconnect. We see these data points that come out about B2B sales, falling number of reps making quota every year. It's down less than 50%, according to CSO Insights. Forrester talks about falling close rates in B2B sales. We're just serving a little bit of a crisis. Part of that is that we're just not educating our salespeople about the human-to-human aspect of sales, and that's really the goal of the Sales House.
Is this independent nature of the sales rep, inside or outside, that drives them to think that they know that they're totally in charge of their futures and their income, most of them, but it seems like so many of them, if they were totally in charge of their lives and their income and their careers, you'd think they take a greater interest in learning the absolute most they can about sales and about improving sales and how to close better, how to get closer to customers and how to ask better questions. And it seems like so many of them just say, well, yeah, I know how to do all that stuff.
The question is, why don't sales professionals take more ownership in their own development? Because they are, in essence, running their own little business in terms of their territory or their set of accounts that they're responsible for. They aren't typically getting that type of education and learning experience from their employers. Had this conversation last week with a sales rep, worked for a big well-known company in San Francisco, actually worked for Yelp. And yeah, his manager basically said, yeah, you should really read this book, but make sure you do it on your own time. You should be learning more and more about selling, do it on your own time. And that, to me, is a huge disconnect.
Why don't companies constantly training their salespeople in sales skills? You certainly have that knowledge. Why don't companies do more of this?
That's a darn good question.
How stupid are they?
I think that they look at it as a necessary evil. And that what we're going to do is we're going to hire somebody like Andy to come in once a year. Again, I picture myself more as an educator and a keynote speaker. And I want to share my perspective on sales. I want to get people to think about sales and think about what they should be doing and think about the steps they should be taking. I'm not huge on, hey, this is the method you should be following, because I think the strength of salespeople should be they should be taught enough that they can make up their own mind about what's the best path for them to follow to succeed based on their own strengths and skills. Yeah, companies, it's just, path of least resistance, I think. And I think if they can just check a box, and if they manage the people tightly enough, that they'll do something. It just doesn't work. Part of the reason, the larger reason, I think, that you're seeing such high turnover among the younger people in sales these days is that they're just not getting anything out of the situation they're in. They're not learning anything, and they want to learn something. And so they're moving from job to job, looking for somebody to take them under their wing and mentor them and help them develop and help give them this, help them learn the skills and abilities they need to go to the next level in their career. Certainly in many industries, that's just not happening. So that's where the sales house comes in. The resource. You're going to have 10 minutes a day that you want to invest in your own development. Here's a place you can come and consume one of our courses, or listen to one of our recorded conversations, or participate in a live workshop and learn something you put to use in your sales.
I think the very nature of this kind of an offering to salespeople is such that their minds click over when they decide to access some of that expertise that's on the site, or listen to those 400 hours of educational content, or go to the weekly office hours at the live coaching. They're going to start moving ahead faster than anybody else in their organization.
I was just writing about this before we started coming on the air, is I'd seen this interview with a football coach, and it was after they'd won a game, and the coach, they'd come from behind. It was sort of a exciting game. Somebody asked the coach, well, what do you attribute, its ability to stay poised and in the game and until you're able to make your comeback? He said, well, we, the team, we believed in the effort we put in. And as they sort of dug into that, he wasn't talking about the effort they put in the game and the effort they put in practices. He was talking about the effort they put in to make sure they all got their sleep during the week, that they ate the right things, that they recovered properly after workouts, that they studied game film, their last game, and if the game come out, the opponent coming up, they put that work in. And it's sort of like the analogous to when consultants tell entrepreneurs is, you need to work on your business, not just in your business. Similarly, salespeople, you got to work on yourself, not just, in your territory. And so you have to prep yourself. You have to educate yourself. You have to look after your mindset, your physical fitness, your sleep. You got to be prepared. And these are things that we're trying to help people with in the sales house. It's not just purely about sales. We do have content, an increasing amount. We're going to be adding the personal side of things.
It's interesting. We always hear stories about basketball players, and after a game, or people come in and they'll be in the gym shooting free throws. Mm-hmm. Before practice, they'll be the first ones there, and they'll shoot 250, 300 free throws. And somebody says, well, why are you doing that? We practice this to start for an hour. I do it for me. I do it to get better. But you're the top of your game. Well, that's how I got there. And that's how I'm going to stay there. And I figured that out early on. I don't get there because I show up to practice on time, go home and have a beer. I've got to stay better than anyone else. And the only way I can do it is this constant training. So you came up with the idea of the sales house. And what does it cost a person to join this thing? If we can take a pause for just a moment,
sure,
for our sponsors, and then we'll come back in just a moment. Let's answer the question, what does it cost to be part of the sales house?
Sure.
How often as a salesperson should I be checking in on this thing? And how often will you communicate with me? And what kind of personal attention can I get if I need it? We'll be back in just a moment.
The way we do business is advancing faster than ever before. Yet amongst the disruptions, there's one pillar that stays standing through it all: the power of a relationship. Relationships are at the core of everything. So how are today's organizations developing, nurturing, and leveraging them to drive success? Join Matt Hines and Sigster's VP of Marketing, Justin Keller, for the on-demand webinar, The State of Relationship Marketing, and learn how your team can bridge the gaps between relationships and revenue. Listen now at HeinsMarketing.com. That's HEINZ marketing.com.
Thank you, Paul. It's nice to hear from our sponsors. We've been speaking with Andy Paul. He's the CEO of Zero Time Selling. He started something relatively new called the Sales House. I ask Andy to come back and say, what does it cost for a salesperson to be part of the sales house? How often do they get communicated with? Do they get any personal attention? Things like that. Andy, the mic is yours.
Sure. Well, the weekly cadence is that, first of all, there's a daily email that goes out to all the members. And actually, it goes out to a larger list. I mean, we are a larger community of the sales house community that wants to be kept apprised of sort of latest in thought leadership and what's going on inside the sales house, gets that email as well. But it's most specifically an email for members. And we communicate. We also have a private Facebook group for the paid members of the sales house, so that we communicate in that on a daily basis. Our cadence during the week is that once a week we put out a new course as part of what I call the 9-Minute Sales Academy, meaning if they come invest 9 minutes, they're going to learn a new sales skill, a new sales behavior, a new sales habit that they can put to use when they're selling right away. And so we one of those every week. We have recorded conversations with guest experts we call sales masterclasses. One of those gets released every week, or just about every week. But every week we do have live coaching hours, and where anybody can come and ask me anything they want about sales. I'll be there personally to answer the questions, give them guidance, help mentor them through a situation they might have. And then we're getting up to a weekly schedule and then live workshops where guest experts come in on specific areas about sales. And we go pretty deep on one topic. It's really action oriented. You're going to take away 2 or 3 really key takeaways in a specific topic. It could be last one we did is effective communications, written communications as well as spoken communications, telling people how to frame the point they want to make, frame their argument, quote unquote argument. It was a great conversation. We got some more about presentations, value propositions, networking, and so on coming up here before the end of the year. So that's sort of the weekly cadence. So there's virtually every day there's something new for people to come in and experience, or as you said before, we've got hours and hours and hours of content that's already there that's divided into 22 different categories. So virtually any aspect of sales that people have an interest in, that they want to learn more about, they can come in, dig in, and find some answers. And it costs $1 a day. So $1 a day for an annual membership. And so you get access to me. Of course, you can always unlimited access to me through our Facebook group. Any sort of questions, I'm always there answering the questions people have in our weekly office hours. And then if people need something a little more intensive, one-on-one, develop their own personal development plan. That's one of the things that we're working on members with. If they need something a little bit more, they get a 50% discount on any of my services if they want to go a little deeper. So, the access is there.
Well, I find it interesting on your site. I called up your site, and it's still sitting here now. And you hit point on your site. You've got copy there that just struck me when I opened it. You don't have to sell alone. It's a very strong statement, because at the end of the day, when the salesperson goes home, and even when their spouse asks them, how did the day go? And they say, well, with this, and I did this contract and that contract, and I got turned down by this, turned down by that. And they say, yeah, that's great. Okay, well, ask me about my day. And pretty soon he's or she's sitting there alone again. I'm by myself. I've got all this pressure. I've got to produce. I make 50% of our income on salary, 50% on incentives. People are not selling. My boss is on my butt. One thing or another. And I think out of all of the career functions in so many companies, salespeople feel alone.
It is a lonely pursuit. I mean, I can speak to years of being on airplanes, flying all over the world, not just around the United States, but where, I'd much rather been at home. But I was out traveling to Asia and Australia and Europe and Russia and all these places to sell by myself. And it is
for an average sales guy too. Well, you've always got your manager. If I admit all the crap that's going on in my head to my sales manager, they're likely to fire me. If they see how insecure I am, if they see how worried I am, if I tell them exactly what's going on in the territory that he or she has no concept of, because if I told them, they'd all go into a panic. Why these people aren't calling me back, why they've put me off, why this is happening. I need somebody to talk to that's not going to be too judgmental, but help me with this. So you really say that Sales House can help you do this. Do the salespeople on Sales House interact with each other or just with you?
Oh, yeah. So we have this private Facebook group, and anybody that's a paid member is invited to join. And the whole purpose is to be able to, express yourself. And we're new. We've only been around for a month, and we're encouraging people to participate more in that, and they are. And we see over time that's really going to be one of the biggest values for people joining, is that there's a community of like-minded people, people who are not, they're lonely people, but people that are aspiring to achieve something. And as you said, they feel like they don't necessarily have people they can talk to about that. Other than, their partner in life, that's fine, but, they don't have a professional peer that they can speak to about it. And so community is the place to do that. And whether it's talking to me about something specific or putting a question out to the group, which people have done, that's a venue for it.
Well, I've been mentor to some salespeople through the years, and sometimes we've gone through conversations, and they said, "Well, you've been very helpful, but I didn't learn anything." I said, "Well, you probably learned that the direction you're going in is correct and right, and I didn't have anything to add to it. Not that I have all the answers, but it sounds like for a lot of them, that confirming conversation is enough." Something on your site that I really find interesting: we train pets, you educate poodles. Are you a poodle or a professional?
You educate people, right?
Jeez.
Yeah. Well, I think that speaks to what training is like. I mean, training is really increasingly these days, sales training is about compliance, right? We've got a process. We're going to train you in this process, or we've got a methodology we follow. We want to train you in this methodology, and we expect you to follow it. To my way of thinking, that's how you train pets. You train pets to be compliant, to respond to commands. And sales is a person-to-person business. And so you don't, again, as I said on the website, you train pets, you educate people. And so are you a poodle or a professional?
Yeah.
And I think that salespeople increasingly, and I think part of this is due to the fact that we've got a young workforce and not a ton of experience yet. Times, and this is not too dissimilar than when my second manager I worked for, didn't have a ton to add to me in terms of helping me get better at what I was doing, but they gave me the freedom to go experiment and learn what worked for me and to become the best version of me. If I had to say there's one goal for the Sales House, the overriding goal, it's to help people learn what they need to learn to become the best version of themselves possible. And have the courage to take some risks in how they sell, to experiment and see what really works for them personally, with the methods they have, with the personality they have, with the skills and the knowledge they have. People can operate in that mode. Then I think their odds of succeeding, of having a fulfilling career, of feeling fulfilled by what they do, goes up substantially because they're feeling like they're performing up to their potential. That to me is just really important. And I'd read this somewhere, and I think it is absolutely true, is, what's the definition of greatness? Greatness is really defined by being the best version of yourself. If you're the best version of yourself, even if somebody else may be better, you still have achieved your greatness. And that's okay. That's great, right? Stop trying to compare yourself with other people. Achieve what you can, but make an honest effort to achieve the best that you can. And again, we're trying to be the resource to help people in sales do that.
I've got to think about that term today because I think you've solved a personal problem for me. But that's another story, Andy.
Oh, good. Well, no charge.
What about, is this only for outside salespeople, inside salespeople?
It's for anybody.
For anybody.
So,
sales managers?
It's B2B sales. It could be inside. It could be outside. Yeah, even it could be account managers and customer success. Yeah, it is for B2B. We actually do have a couple B2C people involved already, but it is primarily B2B.
Now, do you discriminate against sales managers, or are they welcome?
No. Actually, I would say we're about 40% sales managers right now. So it's for both the individual contributors and the managers. We've got content for both based on titles people see. Some will be a little bit more management oriented. Some may be more individual contributor oriented. If you're an individual contributor and you have aspirations for management, got a ton of great content for you to consume to help you start to learn about leadership, managing people, how you interview, how you recruit in the Sales House.
You're really creating a community of salespeople inside, outside sales management that supports itself and is supported by expert in the industries to help these salespeople to be the best version of themselves.
Yes.
Is that kind of the program?
Yes. And ultimately, I think pay it forward, once they've achieved this, to help others in similar situations. That's where the community, I think, is really important, because sales fundamentally is an apprenticeship, as you know.
Yep.
As much as we get trained, we fundamentally learn most of what we learn about sales from doing. And that's why I think the training is broken, because it's insisting you learn it and you do it this way, as opposed to learn something and say, well, what's the best way I can apply this? I mean, I didn't sell the way everybody else sold when I came up. I spent the first chunk of my first year or two in sales. I was out making 30, 40, 50 sales, cold calls a day, physical cold calls a day. And then I said, well, God, there's got to be a better way to do this. And there was a guy in my office who was doing something slightly different than what everybody else was doing. And I looked at what he did and said, well, that could be a good model for me. But what happens today in sales is so often we don't give salespeople that flexibility or the tools to understand that they could do something different. They could approach things differently, that they could take a risk and, not say, oh God, I got to make 50 calls today to get 5 conversations, but say, well, how could I structure it so I can make 10 calls today and get 5 conversations? I mean, that's like heresy in some people's eyes. But that's the way I sold. I mean, I always get amused when, I hear people talking about sales manager, we need 5x pipeline coverage. And it's like, well, okay, if you insist on 5x pipeline coverage, then of course you're going to have horrible close rates, because you're forcing people to put crap into their pipeline. I always ran sort of 1.5x coverage in my pipeline. And I was selling some pretty big deals that were pretty binary. If I'd lost them, it would have been real problematic. But I did a better job of qualifying them. I understood what it meant to qualify a prospect. And if somebody was qualified in my pipeline, they were going to make a decision to do something.
What percentage of salespeople do you think will buy this themselves? What percentage can their companies sign them up and pay for this training?
They can. I think it'll change over time. Initially, now we're probably running about 80% people paying for themselves. And I think over time, because we haven't really focused yet on corporate sales, we will as we move into 2019. But right now, it's predominantly individuals that are motivated individuals that are continuous learners who are saying, this is a pretty modest investment to make in myself.
Well, I know it's pretty easy to find the Sales House.
Well, I think that there's 2 things. One is you can go to thesaleshouse.com, and pretty lengthy homepage. You can go through. There is a chat function there, and we've got somebody manning the chat function most of the time. So you can get some live help, and that's actually been very useful for a number of our members that have joined that way. So that's one path. You can also go there, and you can, if you're not already receiving my daily emails, you can sign up to receive my daily emails and continue to explore the Sales House that way, and join perhaps after you've seen some of what we can offer.
One last question. Do you have discounts for corporations that sign up on the whole sales force?
We do. If they contact me at andy@thesaleshouse.com. It's
a great product for a sales manager to offer and be able to talk about it at weekly sales meetings and what they've learned. And that is a great help. So I'll certainly keep in mind that with clients. How can someone reach you personally, Andy?
Email me, again, at andy@thesaleshouse.com. I know that can be old-fashioned, but they can do that. They can call me at 619-980-4002 or connect with me on LinkedIn. It's after this / it's The Sales House.
That is great. We've been speaking with Andy Paul, CEO and founder of Zero Time Selling. He's written the 2 most powerful books in the industry, Zero Time Selling, which I've given to salespeople. I've used his thoughts and processes myself, and it's been very successful for us at the Funnel Media Group. And Amp Up Your Sales. It's also a great book. Thank you, Andy Paul.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's been an honor.
Paul, over to you.
You've been listening to another episode of SLMA Radio, brought to you on behalf of our 9,100 plus members of the Sales Lead Management Association. SLMA Radio is a syndicated show, and our archives have over 297 episodes, with an audience reach of 73,977 listeners at last count. This show is one of 8 that we offer on the SLME Live Radio Network, which collectively has reached over 259,000 people. Easy to find us, easy to subscribe through iTunes and Stitcher for Android users, and lots of other platforms, wherever fine podcasts are found.